Something extraordinary is happening inside the Republican Party right now, and it is moving faster than most people realize. A full-scale civil war has erupted within MAGA, not between Democrats and Republicans, not between the left and the right, but between Trump loyalists and Trump loyalists. Republicans attacking Republicans, MAGA turning on MAGA, and the single issue sitting at the center of all of it is the Epstein files. Let that sink in for a moment. The most explosive intra-party conflict the Republican Party has seen in years is not about taxes, not about immigration, not about foreign policy. It is about whether or not a child sex trafficking investigation gets released to the American public. And Donald Trump, the man who campaigned on draining the swamp, on transparency, on taking down the deep state, is now leading the charge to suppress it. He is going after his own allies, his own endorsed candidates, his own base, anyone who had the audacity to say those three words, release the files. Where are you watching from today? If you believe the world is entering a far more dangerous phase of political and global instability, subscribe now because the next major escalation could arrive faster than most people expect. Drop a comment below. Are you surprised that it's the Epstein files tearing MAGA apart from the inside? Keep watching because this situation is escalating rapidly and there are layers to this story that most coverage is completely missing. Thomas Massie is a Republican congressman from Kentucky who has voted with Donald Trump roughly 99% of the time. He is not a moderate, he is not a Democrat in disguise. He is a conservative legislator with one of the most consistent records of loyalty to Republican priorities in the entire House of Representatives. But Massie did one single thing that put him directly in the crosshairs of Trump's political machine. He led the discharge petition to release the Epstein files, and now Trump has declared war on him with a ferocity that is genuinely stunning to watch. Trump posted publicly that Massie is, quote, the worst Republican congressman in the history of the party. He called him disloyal, ungracious, and sanctimonious. He demanded that voters in Kentucky wipe away, in his words, the stench of Thomas Massie. And to back that up, the MAGA machine has poured an almost incomprehensible amount of money into defeating him in a primary. We are talking about what could end up being $50 million for a single House seat in Kentucky. $50 million, the most money ever spent challenging a sitting congressman in a primary in American history, all because Massie said the American public deserves to know what is in those files. But it gets more disturbing when you look at the tactics being deployed against him. Laura Loomer, operating essentially as Trump's political attack dog, began spreading fabricated personal smears against Massie, including manufactured claims about his personal life after the death of his wife, and a completely baseless accusation that his primary financial backer is an Iranian operative. They called him an Iranian terrorist cell, a man who votes with Republicans 99% of the time, a man who has spent his entire congressional career supporting conservative legislation. The moment he asked for transparency around a child sex trafficking investigation, he became, in their framing, an enemy of America. That tells you everything you need to know about what is really happening here. Then there is the AI-generated attack ad. Political action committees aligned with Trump and the MAGA machine produced a digitally fabricated video designed to make it appear as though Massie was entering a hotel room with progressive Congresswomen Ilhan Omar and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. The ad called it a quote-unquote throuple and compared it to adultery and a betrayal of the America First movement. This is the level of desperation we are witnessing. They are deploying artificial intelligence to manufacture visual disinformation against a congressman who simply pushed for the release of public interest documents. The strategic calculation here is obvious. They cannot beat him on the merits, so they are trying to destroy him personally, financially, and reputationally. And Massie is not alone in being targeted. Lauren Boebert, a congresswoman who has endorsed Trump, supported Trump, and voted with Trump the overwhelming majority of the time, traveled to Kentucky to campaign alongside Massie in solidarity over the Epstein files. Trump's response was immediate and vicious. He posted publicly asking whether anyone is interested in running against Boebert in Colorado's 4th congressional district, signaling that he would actively recruit a primary challenger and withdraw his long-standing endorsement of her. Boebert responded by saying she knew the risks and would stand by her friend regardless. But the message Trump sent was unmistakable. Cross me on the Epstein files and I will come for your seat, no matter how loyal you have been, no matter what your record shows. Marjorie Taylor Greene has also entered this conflict in a way that is genuinely remarkable. Greene confronted Trump directly, pushing back on his demand that she stop supporting the release of the Epstein files. According to reporting, Trump told her personally that releasing those files was hurting him, hurting his friends, and hurting MAGA. And Greene's response was pointed. She told him it is a child sex trafficking ring. That exchange reveals the core tension at the heart of this entire civil war. On one side, you have people who, regardless of everything else they have done politically, are drawing a line at covering up what is alleged to be an international child sex trafficking network. On the other side, you have a president whose name appears in those files more times than Jesus appears in the entire Bible, Old and New Testament combined, and who is now wielding the full weight of his political operation to ensure those files never see the light of day. Pressure is building behind the scenes in ways that most casual observers simply are not tracking. Senator Thom Tillis, a MAGA-aligned Republican senator, has been publicly calling out Trump and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth as, in his words, utter amateurs. The specific flashpoint is the decision to withdraw 4,000 American troops who were stationed in Poland as part of NATO commitments. This is not a minor procedural disagreement. This is a senator within Trump's own coalition accusing the administration of undermining a critical strategic alliance in the middle of an active European security crisis. And the word Tillis chose, amateurs, is not just an insult, it is a characterization of institutional incompetence at the highest level of military and foreign policy decision-making. Then there is Senator Rand Paul. Trump publicly called him a very difficult and highly unreasonable Republican vote and slammed him for traveling to Kentucky to campaign alongside Massie. Paul, like Massie, has been vocal about the need for transparency around Epstein, and like Massie, he is now being publicly humiliated by the President of the United States for it. Few people realize how serious this has become when senators within your own party are calling you amateurs, when congresswomen you personally endorsed are defying you publicly, when the issue tearing your coalition apart is a child sex trafficking investigation. That is not a manageable internal disagreement. That is structural fracture. Meanwhile, in Louisiana, Trump is actively working to destroy Senator Bill Cassidy, an incumbent Republican senator who voted to convict Trump during the second impeachment trial. Trump endorsed Cassidy's primary challenger and publicly called him a sleazebag, a disloyal disaster, and a terrible person. He urged Louisiana voters to remove him in the most recent primary. What makes this particularly revealing is that Cassidy, a former physician, made the deliberate choice to support figures like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. for positions in the Department of Health, a clearly political calculation to try to rebuild goodwill with Trump after the impeachment vote. It did not work. Trump does not forgive, and he does not move on. The Louisiana situation is a warning to every Republican in America. There is no path back once you cross him, no matter how much you capitulate afterward. In California, the MAGA civil war has taken a completely different shape, but with equally revealing dynamics. Because of redistricting following Proposition 50, 2 MAGA Republican districts were merged into one, forcing incumbent Republican Congresswomen Young Kim and Republican Congressman Ken Calvert to run against each other in a single district. The result is a race where both sides are producing the kind of brutal attack content normally reserved for opposing parties. Young Kim released an ad going directly after Calvert's documented personal history, specifically a decades-old incident in which he was found in a compromising situation with a sex worker in a vehicle. The ad called him sleazy, corrupt, and a betrayal of MAGA values, and explicitly tied his behavior to the broader pattern of corruption that Trump's own base claims to oppose. This is the MAGA coalition eating itself, 2 Trump-endorsed incumbents destroying each other in public while their voters watch. This situation is escalating rapidly, and there is one story within it that has not received nearly enough attention: the case of Tom Keene Jr., the Republican congressman from New Jersey's 7th Congressional District, who has been completely absent from Congress for what appears to be several months now. His staff says he has a medical issue. Speaker Mike Johnson has confirmed he spoke with him briefly on the phone about 2 weeks before his public acknowledgement, but Johnson provided essentially no details about Keene's condition, his prognosis, or when he is expected to return to active duty. Johnson's response at a press conference when asked if constituents deserve to know what is happening was, to put it charitably, evasive. He confirmed only that Keene has a medical issue and that he sounds great on the phone. What makes this situation particularly significant is the context surrounding Keene's absence. He has been one of the most aggressive stock traders in Congress, a prolific user of his legislative position in ways that critics have characterized as self-dealing on a significant scale. His district, New Jersey's 7th, is considered one of the most competitive and consequential congressional districts in the country heading into the next election cycle, and his opponent, Rebecca Bennett, is a former United States Navy helicopter pilot and Air National Guard officer who personally flew missions through the Strait of Hormuz, positioning her helicopter between Iranian vessels and American aircraft carriers to ensure safe passage. While the sitting Republican congressman is missing, his Democratic challenger is someone with first-hand operational experience in the exact geopolitical region that is currently at the center of America's most serious military entanglement. And that brings us to the broader strategic dimension of everything unfolding right now. Because the Strait of Hormuz is closed, Iran shut it down the moment the Trump administration entered military conflict with them, and the fact that this was entirely predictable makes the administration's lack of preparation all the more damning. Any serious strategic planner looking at the potential for military conflict with Iran would have listed the Strait of Hormuz closure as the single most obvious and immediate retaliatory measure Iran would deploy. It is not a sophisticated intelligence assessment, it is the first thing on the list, and yet the administration, by all available evidence, failed to develop a credible contingency plan for it. The operation naming has become almost absurdly revealing in its incoherence. Midnight Hammer was announced as total obliteration. Then Epic Fury was launched to stop uranium enrichment, even though total obliteration had supposedly already been achieved. Then came Project Freedom, which lasted somewhere between 12 and 15 hours before quietly disappearing. Then Project Freedom Plus, which was announced but apparently never actually launched. And now Operation Sledgehammer is being floated. This is not a military strategy. This is branding. This is an administration that has confused the language of decisive action with the thing itself, and the Strait of Hormuz, one of the most strategically critical waterways on the planet, through which roughly a fifth of the world's oil supply passes, is now being used as leverage by Iran precisely because no serious plan existed to prevent it. The military toll being quietly absorbed right now is significant and underreported. The USS Gerald R. Ford Carrier Group completed what is now the longest naval deployment since the Vietnam War, over 300 days continuously underway at sea. The human cost of that to the crew, to their families, to the ship's mechanical systems is enormous and not easily quantified in a press briefing. America's munitions stockpiles have been significantly depleted, and analysts with access to open-source military data are estimating it will take years and hundreds of millions of dollars to rebuild to pre-conflict readiness levels. The asymmetric warfare Iran is deploying, drones, mines, low-cost equipment that forces expensive American countermeasures, is precisely the kind of 21st century conflict dynamic that requires long-term strategic thinking, the kind of thinking that simply does not appear to be present in this administration's approach. And through all of it, the MAGA civil war over Epstein, the senator calling the administration amateurs, the missing congressman, the Strait of Hormuz closure, the incoherent military operation branding, the through line is the same. An administration that ran on accountability is suppressing a child sex trafficking investigation. A party that ran on transparency is spending $50 million to destroy a congressman who asked for it. A government that ran on ending forever wars has started one with no clear objectives, no exit strategy, and no honest accounting of the human cost being paid by the service members deployed to execute it. The people who are now being branded as traitors within MAGA are the ones who simply asked, "What are you hiding and why are you so desperate to hide it?" That question does not go away. It does not get buried under $50 million in attack ads. It does not disappear because Donald Trump calls someone disloyal on social media. And the fact that the answer to that question is powerful enough to fracture a political coalition from the inside, powerful enough to make the President of the United States go to war with his own most loyal supporters, tells you something about what those files actually contain and why so many powerful people are so determined to make sure you never see them.